listening to GMR Radio. And now, the Great Movie Radio Show.
All right, everyone. Quiet on the set. Places. We've got a show to make here. Are Chris and Gabe ready? They are. Okay, everyone. In 3, 2, 1, and... Coming to you live from sunny Orlando, Florida, it's the Great Movie Radio Show, a movie talk podcast starring Chris and Gabe.
All right, hello everyone, and welcome to the Great Movie Radio Show. This is Chris Schneider. With me is my compadre Gabe Jaramillo.
Hello, everybody.
Which that's changing. So, we're gonna have to change that on the show, I guess. I don't know. With us today is our lovely friend and voice talent for the show, Dave Feske. Welcome back to the show, Dave.
Thank you. Very, very nice to be back, and good to see your faces while we talk. This will be, I think, more fun.
Well, Dave, we had you on for our 31st birthday of Great Movie Ride episode, and that was a wonderful 2-hour extravaganza of my microphone messing up on 3 different occasions. And, yeah, so...
I'll try not to get pulled this time.
Yeah. Well, if my microphone would have worked right, we would have had you for the whole thing.
My hand disappeared, but I'm shaking my fist.
Yeah, I know. Curse you! Microphone, technology. So yeah, that's why
The downside of videos is the call quality can sometimes be affected, but hopefully we'll have a pretty smooth run today.
Yeah, we're hoping so. And if not, no one will ever see this, so they'll never know.
That's a very good point.
Oh, yeah. What we're going to talk about today is some inspirations from film that are beyond the favorites that you gave us for Around the Track and your top 5 scores and composers, and then some directors and some other just, odds and end movies and ones maybe you didn't like. That wasn't good.
That happens sometimes.
They do. So yeah, we're going to start with 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea being one of the movies that have inspired you beyond favorites. What about that is like special? What's important about this movie that even though it didn't make your favorite list, that you still like? It's one of my favorites.
So it's kind of obviously multifaceted question to try to get around. One of the reasons why it was such a big inspiration was because it was my second favorite attraction when I first got to go to Disney World, was the 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea ride. But even before that, I was already like really obsessed with the movie. I loved the Nautilus. I just thought it was like a really cool design and just a really fun story. I mean, it's just really like just intriguing story, of this weird, scientist, professor guy who just is in a submarine traveling across the oceans. He's isolated himself from the rest of the mankind because he just doesn't feel like they are, like worth redeeming, basically. And then it's just a fun adventure movie. I mean, in terms of like Disney films and live action films, I think it's one of their best that they've ever made. And you look at the effects that went into it. I mean, you've got like miniatures and giant puppets. The giant squid at the end is like a huge puppet. Some really amazing actors, in the form of Kirk Douglas and Peter Lorre and all these people. So I just always really, really liked it as just like a fun adventure movie. And then getting a chance to actually like go inside the Nautilus and actually, go on an undersea adventure at age 9 or 10, whatever it was, whenever I first went to Disney World, just like solidified it for me. And ever since then, I've always just been really obsessed with it. I think it's just one of my favorite movies ever. It doesn't really fit a lot of the genres that I would kind of think about. It's an action adventure. It's kind of sci-fi. It's adapted from a pretty remarkable book. But I'm also just, I think more than anything else, I love the style of it and the look of what would have the future looked like to someone in the 1880s or something. But the Nautilus, I have like a huge passion for. I love it. I even have the tiki glass from Trader Sam's. It was a
yeah.
So yeah, it just all around love it. And also has just of all things, my wife and I always sing. There's a song that Ned Landers, who Kirk Douglas plays Ned Landers, and it's the whale of a tale to tell you lads, a whale of a tale or two, and it's all about the girls that he's had misadventures with, and it's just really funny. And anyway, yeah, it's a funny song and just a fun movie, and yeah, it's worth watching if you've never seen it before.
I want to say I've seen it like when I was little, but I can't remember. Like, not enough to like say I've actually seen it and can have any memory of it. So we'll just say it's not one I've seen. I don't know. Gabe, have you seen that one?
No, I can't. But I mean, like, you know, I looked it up on IMDb and stuff and saw some of the photos, and you could definitely tell, like, you know, there's a lot of movies nowadays. You can see the inspiration from this movie, and you know, I never got to ride the ride at Disney World. If I did, it's like, you know, with you, Chris, watching the movie, I don't remember riding it, so it doesn't stick out to me. But it looks interesting. Looks fun.
Yeah, and I know it's hailed as a classic, and Kirk Douglas is one of my favorite older actors from that era. So it's one I need to maybe go back and reclaim into my memory. So I don't know.
Definitely,
we'll
yeah. I highly recommend it. For years and years now, probably over the last, I don't even know, 10 years almost, there have been like various filmmakers whose names have been thrown out to potentially do like a remake of either the Disney version of the movie or just obviously adapt it from the book. There's a lot of creative changes that Disney made from the book, and one of the more interesting ones is in the book. The Professor Nemo, or Captain Nemo, right? He uses electricity in the book to power the submarine, and of course, when the book was written, electricity wasn't even like a real thing yet. And in the Disney movie, they don't really like explicitly say it, but Captain Nemo actually uses fission. He uses nuclear power to power the submarine, which of course at that time was like unheard of. I mean, it was almost 10 or 15 years later when the U.S. Navy actually used nuclear powered submarines. So the book obviously was way ahead of its time. The movie was a little ahead of its time. And everybody from like Brad Pitt to David Fincher, you know, have been tied to a 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea movie. So my hope and wish is that someday they will actually make another version of it, and it, you know, lives up to the hype.
Dude, if Fincher made 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea with like Brad Pitt as Kirk Douglas's character, that would be a box office draw. And I'm sure it would be like a darker, more intense version too, which, you know, this ocean, it's got some dark spots. So that would be, I'm sure that would be interesting. Plus Fincher doing an underwater movie, that would be.
You know, again, you have this Captain Nemo individual who's basically a super wealthy guy. He's extremely intelligent person. He's a collector of art and books and all this kind of stuff. So he just kind of has this forward-thinking view of mankind or humankind, and he decides that he doesn't want to have any part of it anymore. So he just builds himself a crazy submarine. And what's funny is a lot of people, they misinterpret 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea as a depth, but actually leagues is a distance. So in the book and then in the movie, they actually traverse almost the entirety of the world's oceans and stuff. And yeah, it's really fascinating.
Maybe it would be a Fincher movie then. You never know.
Oh, yeah.
I might have to check it out. I already, as you were speaking, I checked the Disney Plus, and it's on there. So
it is.
Yes,
oh,
it
okay.
is.
I was.
Oh, yeah.
I was writing a note to myself to make sure it's on there.
And I may have to get the book too. I just got the other day Ready Player One after you recommended the book.
I actually had the movie on. So I'm sitting in my office, and because it's also my work office, I have my work computer and my home computer. Anyway, I had Ready Player One playing on my home computer while I was like just doing emails and stuff yesterday. So yeah,
Nice.
really fun. Yeah, really fun book. And I think the movie's really fun too. There's a lot of changes that Spielberg made, and almost a good point, right? So like 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, Ready Player One, adaptations of any kind, you know, a good filmmaker can look at a book or another story structure and figure out the best way that it can fit into a film structure and make those kind of necessary adjustments and changes. And I think Disney, I don't know who directed 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, but just Walt Disney Studios in general, from a creative standpoint, made some fun changes to that story. And yeah, Ready Player One is also a good one that they made some kind of necessary changes to make it more exciting and stuff. But I hope you enjoy the book. It's fun.
Nice.
The director was Richard Fletcher, who did Soylent Green and Red Sonja.
Really?
Yeah.
Soylent Green is made out of paper.
And he did Conan the Destroyer.
So from 20,000 Leagues, working for Disney, to these, big Arnold Arnold action movies. That's awesome.
Oh yeah. He also did Fantastic Voyage. I recall seeing that when I was little.
Actually, that's a really fun one too. Another kind of 60s movie. It's one of the reasons why I'm really upset. I never got to ride on Body Wars, which was an Epcot attraction.
Yeah.
But it was a motion simulator, and my mom would not ride motion simulators, and for she get motion sickness, and so we never rode Body Wars. I got to ride Star Tours at the time when I was younger, but I never got to ride Body Wars. But Fantastic Voyage and Inner Space, the Dennis Quaid movie with Martin Short's, same thing. I'm like absolutely fascinated by the inner workings of the human body. So yeah, Fantastic Voyage. That's a Raquel Welch movie. Fun anecdote. My mom said that when that movie came out, she's got two older brothers, my uncles, and they were like teenagers when that movie came out. And there's a scene in Fantastic Voyage where they're all out like swimming around in the bloodstream, and Raquel Welch is in this movie, and they're all wearing like scuba suits, and they start being attacked by antibodies, right? And so they get back in their like little craft, and the other scientists that are there, they have to like peel these antibodies that are sticking to Raquel Welch and her, skin tight wetsuit kind of thing. And my mom was joking. She said, my brothers would sit and watch that scene over and over again, and like fantasize. Oh, imagine if we got to be the ones who, with Raquel Welch. So it'd be like if, Sofia Vergara was doing a movie now or something, and just, oh yeah, I want to be the one that's there. So.
You had me at Sofia Vergara.
I was gonna say you leaned right into that one. You were like, "Hello." Oh God!
This is why the bit, like, people who are just listening are going to be like, "What is happening?"
Yep. We're having all the fun here in Video Land.
It's like listening to stand up. Like I don't get it. I missed that whole bit.
Yeah.
Chris, Video Land was the name of my parents' video store.
That's right. Yeah. Nailed it. Easter egg for everybody. There we go.
There you go. Full circle, baby.
And now we're going again. We're taking right off. Next in Video Land, we're going to talk about Saving Private Ryan. Yeah, for real. Yeah. Saving Private Ryan. What a film. I remember when that movie came out, and my grandfather was still alive, and he would always tell me World War II stories. I can't remember if we took him to the theater or when it came out. We got him the VHS. We ended up getting that for him anyways. But he watched it regardless, and he said it was his favorite movie. He said it felt like I was back there, and I felt like I was watching me going through the situation, because he was a medic in World War II. And so some of the situations that they went through, he had similar stories. He told me one where a plane crashed. I forgot where they were. It's been a long time since my grandfather passed, and since I've heard stories from him, of course. And this big plane crashed, German plane, and him and his little troop walked up just to kind of inspect for survivors. So like in 1917, where, even though the foreign plane crashed and the two were walking, they still checked to make sure that, you try to be humane in war, but sometimes it doesn't work out. So they checked. And this might get a little explicit, but there was just human brain juice and just parts all in the cockpit. And he's telling me this, and I think I was 8, and I'm just like,
Bro!
Yeah, I know. So Saving Private Ryan comes out, and we're watching it, and you could see the look on his face. Just it was a mixture of awe, and he felt like he was living in the past, and you could see the enjoyment of the camaraderie of the troops in the movie was something he picked up on, and probably was giving him memories of his own friends in war, and very mixed emotions during the film. But it was his favorite. When he passed away, my dad had a box for me, and in the box, and it's sitting on my shelf, is the 2 VHS tape set of Saving Private Ryan that was my grandfather's. So it's near and dear to me, and that's my 2 cents, my TED Talk. But it's a wonderful film, hailed as the best World War II movie of all time. What about it makes it so inspirational for you, I guess?
I mean, I think it's kind of hard to articulate exactly why. I think it's just obviously had like a massive impact because it inspired a lot of other media even afterwards. So like I'm a big video game player and I like military first person shooters. So things like the Medal of Honor, Allied Assault, or like the new Call of Duty World War II, and being able to sort of experience, even almost like the film version of things. My grandfather was a pilot in World War II, so a little bit different experience, but he dropped off the 101st Airborne in Normandy and stuff, and that's Matt Damon's character is a paratrooper and all that kind of stuff. But I also went to see the movie, and it was just with my dad and my brother, and I just like distinctly remember actually going into the movie theater and sitting down and like almost the entire experience of that particular watch. Watching that entire movie, like I can just like remember everything I felt the first time I watched it, and I was definitely like awed and inspired by the huge action sequences, the big visual sequences as well. So the beach landing or the final fight at the end, or the assault on the radar station in the middle of it. But it wasn't until after like I joined the military and watched the movie several more times that I actually began to appreciate those moments of just like the soldiers hanging around and shooting the shit and all that kind of stuff with each other. And I almost appreciate those scenes more than the big set piece scenes that are kind of around them. So I think to your point, I mean, you can almost feel the camaraderie and all that kind of stuff. And it's neat too, because, they actually put the actors through a kind of boot camp and all this training and stuff. They did the same thing for the actors who did Band of Brothers and The Pacific, the HBO miniseries shows, which were also produced by Steven Spielberg and Tom Hanks. So they actually, the cast actually bonded together and stuff as well. And I think that was just pretty remarkable. And from a filmmaking standpoint, I have a really hard time trying to figure out what's your best, what's Steven Spielberg's best movie. And I would argue that Saving Private Ryan is his best film that he's ever made. And looking at something like that beach landing, knowing that scene in particular wasn't really something that was like scripted or planned, and they treated it just like the soldiers would have treated the beach landing. They basically said, here's where they're first getting onto the beach for the first time. Where is the soldier going to go? And it took them forever to actually film that whole sequence because they could only plan out 30 seconds to a minute at a time. And just really, really, really fascinating. And you can tell like the love and appreciation and care that everybody put into that movie. And I think it's the best tribute to the men and women who served during World War II that you could possibly ask for.
I haven't watched it yet, but I recently got the 4K UHD, and apparently they've redone everything in Dolby Vision and Dolby Atmos, and I've read nothing but raving reviews on how like crystal clear the format is. So if getting to see it in the theater or right when it came out, you thought you were in there, I still need to crack this thing open and watch it, but I can only imagine the clarity that it's going to provide and the immersive audio with the gunshots and the explosions and mortar rounds, and also I'm excited to watch it. And I've been meaning to. I just too many movies, so little time.
No, I
Gabe,
will
have you
admit,
seen Saving Private Ryan?
I will admit I have not seen it, and it's funny. Like I haven't looked at your list since we talked last time, but I was like sitting there, and it was like 3:00 in the morning, and next on AMC was Saving Private Ryan, and I was like, am I gonna be awake that long? And I was like, no. But I'm not like a big war movie person either. But
yeah,
that was a lot of war movies. I feel like came out when I was like in my teens, and I was like, I don't want to watch this. Is weird and stuff. And then, maybe now I'll give it a second shot and we'll see what happens. Maybe I'll come over and watch it with Chris and the.
I was gonna say, yeah. There we go. We'll see.
I'll sit on the porch in a bubble and like social distancing
through the window.
You pass the popcorn, please.
Well, I'm glad I didn't highlight too many scenes or anything because they could be potential spoilers. But it's just a really remarkable movie, and it's not like one of those movies. One of the reasons why we've had a hard time sort of getting around to it, even though I've had an interest since I did my list. Really, is the main reason, but. It's not necessarily like an easy movie to watch, like from like an emotional standpoint, the kinds of things that you're probably going to feel going into it. And I think that's what makes war movies or just really heavy drama films, not everybody's always in the mindset to be like, yeah, I think I want to go cry today or feel stressed out, but that's not really the takeaway that I would sort of give to somebody. I would just say, no, like, it's a really rich movie. It's a very fulfilling film. So, I mean, if you go and watch it, you'll just really appreciate not only the story that's being told, but just the fact that they could even do it at that scale and all that kind of stuff. So it's really just an incredible film.
You need to see it, man. It's
I mean, based on what you guys are telling me, I'm like, oh my god, like, especially for like, with your grandparent and stuff like that, like being in World War II and seeing that, I can only imagine like emotionally what they went through. Like, it's like, oh yeah, it was like I was there yesterday, but
we're gonna move on before we all start crying and drinking and missing home while we're at home. I know. We're there, man. We're there. Fargo is the next one on your list, and I have seen this one, and I know it has connection to your home, and that's one of the reasons. So I'll let you dive into that because it's always fun to hear the story.
The funniest part to me is that only like the first 5 minutes of the movie takes place in Fargo. The rest of it just takes place all throughout Minnesota, Brainerd, Minnesota, and Minneapolis, St. Paul area. And yes, I've been to all of those places. So my hometown is Moorhead, Minnesota, which I talked about in the last episode, right? Because from The Big Lebowski, one of the characters is from there. But yeah, the movie Fargo, it was crazy. Like, they had like an Oscars watch party at the Fargo Theater and Frances McDormand was there and all that kind of, I mean, so it was like super awesome. It like, kind of blew our little town. I say little, but 100,000 people in the surrounding area and stuff. But people in the Fargo area are not used to that level of attention. So the fact that like there was a whole movie named Fargo and it's like this crazy crime movie, I mean, for people who don't know the story of it, it's about a guy who hires a couple of thugs to kidnap his wife for ransom. That's the whole kind of plot behind the story. And then there's a female sheriff played by Frances McDormand, who's also like 7 months pregnant. The character is like super pregnant. Anyway, a lot of the stuff goes wrong. There's some, murders and all this kind of stuff, and she gets involved. And it's just an incredible movie. It takes place in like the 80s. And then everybody has just these outrageously thick Minnesota accents. So
perfect. I'm in.
Yeah. The thing of contention for everybody is like people in Fargo who are always like, we don't sound anything like that. And you're like, no, you do. Like everybody does. I've been able to kind of get rid of mine a little bit, but when I talk to my family back home, so how's everyone doing then? Everyone having a good time? Oh, okay. Yeah, you betcha. So, I mean, like, and the Coen brothers who wrote this, they, if anybody's familiar with the Coen brothers at all, their scripts are like a Quentin Tarantino movie. Like, you as an actor, you just follow the script. Whatever they write, that's what you say. And there's like a cadence to it. And some of the actors would say, like, there's one guy, he says his character is asking, I want to go to the pancake house. And the actor goes up to the Coen brothers and he's like, hey, am I supposed to be saying, can I go to the pancakes house? And they're like, no, just pancake. Like no S at the end, like it's bad grammar on purpose, that kind of stuff. And so every little yeah, you betcha, and all those things. I mean, the head nods, all of that is like a cadence throughout the whole movie. And really good performance, amazing performances. Frances McDormand, I think, won an Academy Award for her performance. Steve Buscemi is in it. William H. Macy is in it. Incredible. And the Coen brothers had made successful movies prior to that, but Fargo really kind of catapulted them up into up at a level where more people knew who they were. They were a little bit more niche before that, but yeah. So can't help throwing out to my hometown.
There you go.
There's another really funny thing about the movie Fargo is it starts out and it says, this film takes place in 1987 or whatever it is, and it says this is based on a true story. But it's not. There's actually nothing true about it. They just put that at the start because they were like, yeah, we can say it is. No, but and then of course now that has spawned the TV show, which I've only seen the first season of the TV show. I need to continue watching, but it's already incredible. And I'm pretty sure for the TV show, Martin Freeman is in the first season, and I'm pretty confident he just like followed my dad around for a while to get the accent. So because it's that good, it's that spot on.
Yeah, I was going to ask if it was because I knew there was the TV show, and I didn't know if it had any correlation, but that's cool.
Loosely tied. There's some strings that tie back to the film, but it's kind of its own thing as well. But yeah, worth checking out. So you got to hear my Minnesota impression, which oddly enough, Gabe, that's also and Chris, that's my Tracy Fox impression. So Mr. Feske, you did an impression of me on that podcast, and I love it.
We'll have to get a video response from her and throw it up once we share this. No, I was going to say the show. I think we've only seen season 1, 2, and I loved it, and need to watch season 2.
Highly recommend. Watch the movie. Watch the show. It is dark comedy at its finest.
So the next one on your list is Inglourious Basterds, my favorite Quentin Tarantino movie of all time, and it is wonderful. Such a fun and weird, it's just chaotic look into the war, and only the way that Tarantino could do it, honestly. And the beginning just goes on, and you're just like going right into it. The terror of, are they hiding Jews, in their house and during, Nazi occupied France. I think the movie's like 10 years old now. Go ahead and talk about it.
No, well, I had to put it on there because as far as Quentin Tarantino movies, I think it's my favorite one of his. I think it's just like the most polished of all of his movies. And yeah, being like a World War II history buff and movie buff in general, it was really fun to like see how he could take that genre and then like totally turn it on its head as well. So the altered history version of it is pretty incredible. The other thing too that really makes it stand out for me are the performances of some of the characters, like Christoph Waltz, Michael Fassbender. Michael Fassbender had been in 300. He's actually in Band of Brothers, which is pretty incredible. And and then I remember watching that movie, and the moment he walked in and he's got the little pencil mustache and his beret on and stuff, and I just like big square jaw. And I remember like just thinking to myself, that guy's going to be a huge movie star very soon. And then, sure enough, like a couple of years later, he was like everywhere. So that's another one too, like from like a filmmaking standpoint. I think Quentin Tarantino had said that he'd written it like 10 or 15 years prior. And then when they went to actually go make the movie, he purposefully created like a short shooting schedule, because his fear was that if he started to go back in to, review the screenplay more, that he would tinker with it. And he said, I remember thinking like when I wrote it 15 years ago, whatever it was, just thinking like, this is already a perfect screenplay. And he didn't want to mess with it. So he purposefully gave himself like a short shooting schedule just so he would adhere to the screenplay that he wrote. And then obviously that's the movie that you ended up with. So yeah,
so good.
Incredible movie. Gabe, what do you think?
I've never seen it. Your top. This was rough. There's been some movies I saw on your other list. This one, I'm looking at all of them, and I'm like, yep, that's a big fat donut for me.
Hey, there's nothing wrong with that, man.
But see, that's why I'm on this show, because you guys have experienced people, not so experienced, and then there's Gabe right at the bottom, just hanging in here, just here for the ride.
I have a hard time talking, which
Terrence,
you're good at, and
movies, though, yeah.
I watch the movies and I show you the movies. There we go. That's our yin yang.
It's a good relationship.
Talk for me, Gabe. No, I'm just kidding. No, I agree, and I love Christoph Waltz. That was the first movie where we got to see his performance in the U.S., and then he's taken off here in the States too, and he's done great movies, like he was, of course, in the recent Bond films, and he's done horrible movies like Green Hornet. And so
I've never seen.
I've seen that one.
It wasn't as bad as everyone. It's okay. It's not what I was expecting, but it also was, because you put Seth Rogen and Green Hornet together. It's kind of what I was expecting. So no, I love Christoph Waltz. That's a bingo. Brad Pitt. I think that was the movie that really made Brad Pitt my favorite actor.
Lieutenant Aldo Rain.
Gore
I just
Lock.
love, like, yeah, that's another thing, like his cadence and the way that he talks. I'm a direct descendant of the Mountain Man Jim Bridger. You know, like, just all those performances are just absolutely incredible. I mean, everybody nailed it.
The sequence where he's telling everybody about the scalps, and I want 100 scalps, and I'll get my scalps. He just to zoom in on him, and it's just.
We're in the business of killing Nazis, and cousin, let me tell you, business is a booming.
Gabe, you need to see this movie, dude. It's so good.
There's already a movie called Inglourious Bastards that doesn't have the misspellings in it. The Quentin Tarantino's movie is purposefully misspelled. So I've never seen that, and I've never seen The Dirty Dozen, the Lee Marvin movie, which is so I know that those films, these kind of over the top action films, or World War II movies, are the inspiration for Inglourious Bastards. So I haven't quite seen the inspirations, but I do love what Quentin did with that one. So happy to watch, and it's a movie about movie making too, because you've got this propaganda film that's going to be shown, and that's kind of the underlying plot of the whole movie. So yeah, just really, really fun movie as well.
Yeah. And that's why I haven't watched it, because I keep searching it and it doesn't come up because I keep typing it correctly. That's what it is.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Like,
blame
I
your
you
grammar.
over my list, and I tried to spell it the way they do, but yeah, I don't know. You'd have to look it up.
Well, the last one on your list before Gabe takes us into film scores and composers with you is Young Frankenstein, which
that's pronounced Frankenstein.
Yeah, my bad. Whatever. Now, I saw it for the first time 6-7 months ago. I had seen the clip in finale all the time on the movie ride, so I and I've known about it, of course, but I never sat down and watched it. And I watched it. It was hilarious. I was crying, laughing the whole time, and probably out of the Mel Brooks movies I've seen, I grew up with Spaceballs religiously growing up. I think I like it more than Spaceballs, actually. I think I really do. But what is it about Young Frankenstein for you, sir?
It's one of my mom's favorite movies, and we had a VHS copy, obviously. So growing up, what's funny is our VHS copy had a color, like the insert for the film jacket was color. So like on the back of the VHS, it was like photos of all the cast members like in color. So like Peter Boyle was actually green, and anyway, but yeah, the movie was made in black and white. But one of my favorite movies. Largely again due to my mom. She loved it. She watched it all the time. I could like say almost any line from that movie and she'll just crack up laughing. But it's also one of those comedies that like there's always something new that you might notice like every time you watch it, so you can watch it multiple times and pick up on a joke that you didn't pick up on the first time and that kind of stuff. And it's interesting that it's regarded as such a popular Mel Brooks movie because he really only directed it, and Gene Wilder actually wrote it and produced it. It was his passion project was to do it, and originally he had asked Mel Brooks to do it, and Mel said no, he didn't want to, and Gene kind of kept pestering him and finally convinced him that he was the only person who could direct the movie. And it's really remarkable because Gene was a huge fan of the old Frankenstein movies. So he treated the genre with a lot of respect and tried to adhere to, all the stuff that made those old monster movies good, but at the same time making this like absurd comedy. And that's like no better displayed than in Frankenstein's laboratory in the movie is actually a ton of the old props and stuff from the original like Frankenstein films. So that's just really, really cool, even though I'm not, like big into that genre or those movies, but it's just like, yeah, that's really neat that they would go to that length to kind of do it. But again, it's just one of those like highly quotable, always funny, you notice something new every time, and then again, it has a personal family connection as well. And that's something you probably notice as a trend in a lot of my movies. I have some kind of like, personal connection with it as well. So yeah, for my family, that's definitely a top 5 quote movie. That's for sure.
Gabe, have you seen that one?
Bits and pieces of it. If I'm not mistaken, there's like the whole number where he sings "Putting on the Ritz."
Yes.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. I've seen that scene. There we go.
That's a good one.
Well,
That's
it's funny, like, and amazing the kinds of things that it like leads to. there's a scene wherein Igor is first meeting Gene Wilder's Frankenstein, and he's got his hump and all that. There's a lot of recurring jokes and stuff, but he does the part where he's got like this little tiny cane that's like, it's like 15 inches long. It's super small. And he goes, walk this way. And he, walks, and then he turns and he hands the cane to Gene Wilder. And this way. Makes Gene Wilder do the same thing. And that actually inspired Aerosmith to write the song Walk This Way. They just, I don't know why. Like,
I didn't know that.
It was a funny lyric. Yeah. So there you go. Talk about Mel Brooks, Young Frankenstein, Walk This Way, Aerosmith, Rock and Roller Coaster, Disney. Everything's 7 degrees.
Videoland, we're back.
Yeah. But yeah, hilarious movie. Watch it.
I think that's why I admired it so much when I finally sat down and watched the whole thing, was just how much attention. I didn't know that they pulled props from the original Frank, so it makes a lot of sense just thinking about it. And as much as I've grown to love What We Do in the Shadows, going back and watching that, I am for certain that when Jermaine Clement and Taika Waititi wrote What We Do in the Shadows, they probably got a good bit of their inspiration from Young Frankenstein.
Definitely. I could definitely see that as well. And I mean, obviously there had been other like zany genre movies, even older ones, Abbott and Costello Meet the Mummy and all that kind of stuff. But I think they had been out of the cycle for such a long time to then approach a movie like that in such an interesting fashion. Originally the studio didn't want it filmed in black and white. They wanted it in full color, but obviously from a creative standpoint, they stuck to their guns and they ended up making a really remarkable movie that's got a good story. It homages the original Frankenstein films really well, and it's just hilarious. So,
Gabe, you want to discuss 5 film scores or composers?
Yeah, awesome. We'll dive into it. The only one that I've never heard of is the first one, Bernard Herrmann, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. He's done Taxi Driver, The Day the Earth Stood Still. I'm pretty sure I saw that he also did Lost in Space, the TV show. He composed for that.
Nice,
yeah. Why is he number 1?
He also did a handful of like Hitchcock films, and so for me, I just honestly don't know the names of a lot of other composers prior to like the 70s and that kind of stuff. And so the fact that he had been around and he's created such iconic like soundtracks and compositions himself. So there's obviously everybody knows the Psycho, re and all that, and there's even an interlude from Psycho. I think it's is it Kate Novak? I think it's when she's driving her car or something, and like Busta Rhymes uses that as a sample in one of it in the song "Give Me Some More." The do 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 do. So I mean, just in terms of like a melody and composition, I really can't identify anybody else, prior to like the 70s that I can just like point to a movie or something and be like, that sounds like Bernard Herrmann. And it wasn't until I had watched Taxi Driver, and then I think my VHS had like a tribute to Bernard Herrmann on it. So like if you finished watching the movie, you could watch this like little feature. And it was Martin Scorsese talking about him, and he was just like over the moon that he'd even gotten Bernard Herrmann to come and do the music for this movie. And I wouldn't say that Taxi Driver has like really. It's not like the kind of music that you would like just think about, not like a John Williams or something like that, but it is still very distinct. If you hear it, you can immediately say, yeah, that's from Taxi Driver. So I think he just created a really unique sound. And as I've learned about him, I've just grown to like appreciate the kind of his style and also the other composers that he's since influenced.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, like, as I'm looking at the list, I'm like, wow, he's done a lot. And especially one of my favorite older shows, he composed 74 episodes of The Twilight Zone.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Nice. Yeah. So I didn't even know that. So that's cool. So I mean, just I just think he was like one of the first real, composers that really created like a unique sound for himself, and that continued throughout his entire career.
So we'll dive into the second one. This one's a little bit more well known in the universe. Mr. John Williams.
Well, I'm pretty sure now has showed up on everybody's list.
Yep.
Maybe.
Yeah. I honestly like what else can you say that hasn't been said already? I mean,
Right.
think of almost any movie soundtrack. Like if I just asked a random person on the street to be like, tell me a movie, like, can you hum a movie soundtrack? I, completely arbitrarily would say 95% of folks are probably going to start humming a John Williams tune.
Right. I mean, yeah, it's like, you think about these composers and stuff and you're like, oh yeah, I know. But like really just diving in and looking at the list, it's, obviously beyond Star Wars. He has, what's it called? The Jurassic World. He's composed music for that. Yeah, like
the first Harry Potter movie. He
Yes.
created the Harry Potter theme. I mean, even
And
Close
that's-
Encounters of the Third Kind, like, amazing.
Jaws, of course. Raiders.
Man.
Indiana Jones.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, he has a long list, and I'm literally still scrolling through his list of composers and stuff. Is there a movie or a trilogy or anything like that like of his movies that really sticks out to you?
Yeah, definitely Star Wars. So I'm just a huge fan of obviously all the movies. I think the Asteroid Belt, music is some of like the most thrilling, like just absolutely incredible. It's the reason why I'm probably one of the few people who worked at Star Tours that really loved working the arrivals hallway because it's just nothing but Star Wars music while you're standing back there. And so like I didn't mind it, man. I loved hanging out back in the arrivals hallway and just listening to like, usually it was just like whatever the music played at the end of the credits was. So it's kind of like a composition of things. But obviously all of his themes are amazing. If I really had to pinpoint like what are just like two really specific ones, I would say the Asteroid Belt or the Asteroid Field chase music, and then the entire ending of Close Encounters of the Third Kind. So even though everybody knows the do 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 do, but the fact that he actually composed the entire like conversation between the humans and the aliens at the end of Close Encounters. So even been able to kind of like he created like a language of music. So absolutely incredible. I'm getting goosebumps talking about that one.
It's funny, and looking at his list, I didn't realize he conducted Home Alone 2: Lost in New York.
He did?
Yeah, that's on. It's on his list. Yeah,
he composed the first one too, I believe.
Yeah.
And also the fact that like my wife and I, when we got married, my sister was our officiant, but like when she announced us, we had the Indiana Jones theme play as we walked out.
Nice.
I know Chris will appreciate these, and Gabe will too. But and then also when we were like. And then when we were like introduced at the reception, we did the Star Wars fanfare and all that kind of stuff. So we found ways to sneak it in, little John Williams into the wedding.
Cool. We will jump to number 3. Am I saying this right? James Horner?
Horner.
Okay. All right. Cool. I just didn't want to,
if you've seen a James Cameron movie, you've heard James Horner's music.
I mean, I see that. The first 2 movies he's known for is Titanic and Avatar.
Yeah.
So,
but he also did Aliens, the sequel to Alien, right? There's the classic. Like, it's funny because it's I think it's actually a ripoff of the Gustav Holst. He's the composer that did the Planets. But anyway, the song Mars from Gustav Holst, which is actually in the movie Gladiator, James Horner like kind of ripped that off because at the end of Aliens, there's the big build-up thing, dun 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 dun, bum 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 bum. And that's James Horner, and they play that everywhere. I'm pretty sure it was like a standard of movie previews in like the early 90s. Like every movie preview had that song in it and stuff. So as far as like 80s, 90s action movies, he's got a pretty good lockdown on a few fan favorites as well.
Yeah, I see that. Like it's a lot of action, and then you hit the 2000s, and he composed "How the Grinch Stole Christmas." This is a great. Yeah. That's one of my I would say, if not my top favorite Christmas movie. Just Jim Carrey.
That one's near and dear to you. I know. Struck me before I kill again.
He did the
What
music. I'm
I
just looking
wear?
now too. He did the music for Captain EO.
Oh yeah,
Oh.
yeah, that's right.
Not the songs, obviously. We all know
Oh,
who
yeah,
wrote the song, but yeah. So I mean, they got Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, Star Trek 3. He's done a whole bunch of stuff. So chances are, if you're hearing a song in your head, if it's not John Williams, it's probably
Right.
James Horner.
Oh,
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's
Or
awesome.
your next person.
Oh, exactly. Mr. Hans Zimmer. I'm trying to
all
like,
of his
bring
music
some
is
flair.
all of his music is very atmospheric. It's very German.
Yeah. No, but I do see what you mean by, atmospheric with, Interstellar and Inception, and even, one of my favorite movies, Gladiator.
Yes. Oh,
Which turned 20 years old the other day. Was it yesterday
I know.
or the day
That's
before?
crazy.
Yeah.
That is really 20. Oh my God. I feel
Mhm.
old. Let me go get my cane so I can finish the episode.
The 15-inch cane walk this way. Is that what you're doing?
But I mean, like, obviously has, great scores and stuff, but why did he make your list?
Just another one of those, like, if I had to just like start thinking about what are movies that are on my list, or what are those soundtracks that I had, my family and I always we have like this whole theory of like, the soundtrack to your life, like what kind of situations are you in where, something like a certain song or a musical composition might kind of fit that tone. And I feel like Hans Zimmer is just kind of that way. Like, I can't help but feel like I'm in a Hans Zimmer movie. We went to Italy for our honeymoon last year, which was incredible. And getting a chance to like go into the Colosseum and actually like be on the ground level was like unbelievable. But I literally like could stand there and just like hear the music from Gladiator like in my head, like everywhere that we went in Italy, I just kept hearing like this Hans Zimmer music. So he also did Black Hawk Down, so like very similar kind of music there. So, and that's one of my top fives. Yeah, I just couldn't leave him off. I just think he's an incredible composer, and all four of the composers that I have listed, they all have very distinct sounds, I think. So he's just another one.
He is a pretty busy 2020, even with his quarantine. He has Wonder Woman, No Time to Die, and Top Gun Maverick. So
the fact he's gonna do a Bond movie,
Pirates of the Caribbean. Oh, I know, that's so exciting.
Oh,
that's awesome. Cool. So we're going to jump from composer and jump into a film score. Dazed and Confused. All right. Of course.
So I put this on here because I was like the kid who I'm not like a huge music head. My brother is. I'm really not. So if I just like watch a movie and I hear a song, like my first instinct isn't to try to like find out who the band is and go and find it. I'm just like, I'll buy the soundtrack. And I think Dazed and Confused sort of like was the first one of the first movies that you didn't just buy the CD for like one song. You know what I mean? Like I had the Cocktail cassette tape just so I could listen to Kokomo by the Beach Boys, That's a true story, by the way. But like Dazed and Confused has an actual amazing soundtrack of just great 70s songs. So many, actually, they made 2 CDs. They had released like, music from the movie, and then they ended up making another one because it was just like people wanted more of these awesome like 70s rock songs and stuff. So I put it on there only because it's like really like the first one of those that I really got into. Now, tons and tons of movies use contemporary music, not just like film scores, but contemporary like songs in a lot of their stuff. And so like if you were to look at my CD collection when I was in high school, it's like over half just like film soundtracks, like inspired by the movie or whatever, or if there was like a song tie-in or something like that. So Batman Forever had Kiss from a Rose by Seal, I mean, just all kinds of stuff. So yeah, I had like a ton of those. So I just have to like give a shout out to the fact that like not every movie is made by an original score. Sometimes a movie is made by the contemporary music that goes along with it. And I think one of the best examples of that currently is the Guardians of the Galaxy films. You look at Guardians 1 and 2, not only do you have like a killer soundtrack, but it's directly tied to the emotional elements of the movie, which is just incredible. And then, yeah, they're just like all jamming songs. So movies continue to do it. They keep doing it. I often think about, like a story or something that I would tell if it was like, if I had to do this, what song could I put in there or something like that? So just going back to like the soundtrack of your life, so I had to give kudos to Dazed and Confused. I felt like it really was like the first one to really be like, not just one song, but like a whole album of just, here's a killer soundtrack to this movie.
Nice. Yeah, I don't even know what my soundtrack would be. Probably something from like Charlie Chaplin as I like goof around and fall.
That would be you, man.
Do the whistle.
Gabe the musical.
There you go.
But I mean, and it's funny, speaking of music, like when you were talking about that, there's been movies that are built around the soundtrack, and it's not, you always original work. I mean, same thing happens with musicals. There's, that's the new and up and coming trend with musicals, basing it off people's music and just building a story around it. So it's cool. It's cool to see in both aspects, but yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah.
Shut up, you two. You want to blow our cover? Psst. Hey, you. You're listening to the Great Movie Radio Show starring Chris and Gabe. Don't nobody move until we get back, or else, if you know what I mean.
Warning. Remain on this podcast. The advertisement you are experiencing is extremely dangerous. Proceed with caution.
Autumn Star Entertainment is an independent producer of movies and video. Their goal is to provide Hollywood-level entertainment for low to no budget. Check them out on Facebook.com/AutumnStarEntertainment or on Twitter @AutumnStarENT.
Hey, what are you looking at? Hit the subscribe button to catch more of the Great Movie Radio Show starring Chris and Gabe, and maybe you won't get hoiked.
Here they come, boss!
Would you look at that, a red light. Running a red light's against the law, and I would never break the law. No more red light.
Hi there, Great Movie Radio Show fans. My name is Dalton Burdett, and I'm here to tell you about the Movie Nights. Well, what are the Movie Nights? The Movie Nights are a small production company out of Orlando, Florida, responsible for award-winning short films, podcasts, and a variety of movie-loving content, and we are also new partners of the Great Movie Radio Show. So, for some more movie-loving content that you guys will probably enjoy, please head over to our YouTube channel, Movie Nights, and you can find the exact link at youtube.com/c/Movie Nights, and also be sure to listen to our podcast hosted by me and my partner Ryan Warner on Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Google Play. And yes, Movie Nights is spelled with a K because we think we're clever.
Time for Chris and Gabe, hosts of the Great Movie Radio Show, to get back to work. I better lay low for a while, the heat's on. On second thought, I could go for some popcorn.
All right. Well, I think it's time to briefly, because we're going pretty long here. We'll try to get to a wrapping point, even though we'll probably end up talking for another 3 hours. Sorry, Gabe. So yeah, your favorite director, Stanley Kubrick, and I still have quite a few of his library to watch. Yeah, I mean, The Shining alone, you watch that, and he deserves any accolade that he's received. It's incredible, and yeah, what about him makes him your one of your favorites?
Yeah, I just fell in love with his style. He has a very symmetrical kind of style, and he loves to use things like the hallway shot in The Shining with the elevator, or the maze, the hedge maze. He loves using the kind of vertical frame, but also keeping everything like really symmetrical. So I don't know why, like that's just the way I sort of look at things as well. So when I'm taking photos or taking videos, that's kind of the way that my eye sort of goes to anyways, is this kind of symmetrical this high level of symmetry and just visual nature. And so I really fell in love with that right away. I've seen, I think, the majority of his film library. I certainly have not seen every single one of his movies, but every single movie that I've watched of his is just a solid movie. They're just really well done, really well made movies, really creative. He was also a pioneer in terms of the technology of things. So the dolly cam, the handheld, or the steady cam, I should call it. The steady cam was invented by him and his film crew to do the hedge maze sequence from the ending of The Shining, because they needed to be moving backwards, but they couldn't have a track down for a dolly for the camera. So they actually invented the steady cam just so they could do these shots, so it's them moving backwards and Danny moving forward and all that kind of stuff. So just in terms of like a technical pioneer, he was always kind of pushing the boundaries of what was possible and what you could do. And then his movies are all just so unique. I mean, you can watch anything from Spartacus, the Kirk Douglas movie, which is a pretty big epic sword and sandals movie, to The Shining, Clockwork Orange, Full Metal Jacket. I think is one of the most unique war movies ever made. It's not really a 3-act structure; it's like a full 2-act structure. So, just in terms of the way that you can think about how a movie is structured, how it's filmed, the way it looks, you're watching a movie when you're watching a Stanley Kubrick film. Unlike maybe somebody like Spielberg, who can do something that's a little bit more kind of natural, or Scorsese, who can kind of get you in a little bit more. But and I think for that reason, sometimes people might think of his films as like a little bit more artsy or something. But they are. He's definitely, I think, not necessarily always making a movie for the audience, but he's building a visual that I think everybody can just look at and say like, wow, that's beautiful, even if it's representing something that's not so beautiful. He's just an incredible filmmaker, in my opinion. It's a shame that he passed away at a relatively early age, but hopefully we could have gotten more movies out of him. But there's a lot of stuff out there as well. So if anybody's interested in just like learning more about him and his style and the people that he worked with and that kind of stuff, there's a lot of documentaries about him. And so highly recommend checking him out. Just a really cool guy. And honestly, like down to earth at the same time. So even though he approached things in like this really interesting way, he was a very likable person. Everybody liked working with him. He wasn't, an a-hole or somebody that people didn't care for. He had a tight-knit group of individuals that he worked with, and they made some really remarkable films that pushed the boundaries of what you could do narratively and visually.
And you can see inspirations of his filmmaking style in films even today. I mean, I don't remember if I've talked about it on the show, but recently Ad Astra with Brad Pitt felt very Kubrickian. And I hadn't seen Space Odyssey when I saw Ad Astra. And so it's funny that I was able to pinpoint his style based on, I think, the 1 or 2 movies of Kubrick that I had seen. And then I go watch Space Odyssey, and I'm like, totally Kubrickian. I think that's why I like that movie as much as I do.
Look, it's a lot of people put his name, along the likes of people like Coppola and that kind of stuff. And Francis Ford Coppola directed Apocalypse Now, and Apocalypse Now is based on the book Heart of Darkness, and Ad Astra is based on Heart of Darkness as well. So there's a little bit of connection, with some of those groups, I guess. But well, some people don't know. Some, I'd say some. I don't know the arbitrary name, but the movie AI, the Steven Spielberg movie with Haley Joel Osment, Jude Law, and all them. That was a Stanley Kubrick film. He was developing it. He had gotten as far as storyboarding and all that kind of stuff when he passed away, and Steven Spielberg took up the rod and went out and tried to do it justice. And it's fun to watch AI because you can definitely see where Steven Spielberg is, but you can also tell where he's channeling Kubrick, all the way to the very end of the movie.
I haven't seen AI in a long time, and it was definitely before I knew that Spielberg took it over from Stanley Kubrick. So it's on my shelf now, and I've been meaning to go back and watch it once I discovered that occurred. Just because to go from Kubrick to Spielberg, that is a completely big shift in direction, because
Yeah,
Oh man, they are two
literally
completely different
literally
people.
a shift in direction.
Yeah, exactly. Videoland. I'm just gonna say that randomly. That's just gonna be my
Sure.
catchphrase now. Videoland.
No.
No.
I've got video of my brother at about age, I don't know, 11 doing a commercial for Videoland.
You showed me that. I think you
I
have.
probably have, yeah.
Um,
So yeah, not to go too far off topic, but yeah, my dad did all of the commercials for the video store. So if anybody wants to have any idea where I get my sense of outgoingness and performance, that's all from my dad. So
we'll come back to the Spielberg stuff in a moment. But you have Martin Scorsese as your next favorite director, and you just saw Goodfellas for the first time.
yeah.
How was that?
It's funny because it's obviously been like spoofed so much since it came out, in all kinds of I think Saturday Night Live has done spoofs of it, and I mean it's been copied, and so I could definitely like see why. I understood the hype like right when I watched it, and I could definitely see why Joe Pesci. I don't know if he won or he was nominated for an Academy Award, but like just everybody did a phenomenal job in that film and the way it's represented. And it's particularly funny because we watched it shortly after I'd been talking to my mom and her husband, my stepfather, who he's a criminal defense attorney in Cleveland, Ohio. He's Italian. And he is literally friends with people that have nicknames like Big Ange and all this kind of stuff. So like all these just super Italian people, he represented members of the Italian mafia, in the 70s and 80s in Cleveland, Ohio, and it was like one of the most dangerous cities in America at the time. So, I mean, the guy just like connected with everybody. He literally knows a guy named Paulie Walnuts and all this kind of stuff because he looks like the character from The Sopranos. And so we were like talking with them like the day before, and he was explaining to us, about some guy with a weird Italian nickname and all this. And so we watched Goodfellas the next day, and I'm like, no, I know exactly what he's talking about. Like these are the, so that was fun. It's like it was a really nice kind of view into that world, and I think gangsters in general, like people are just intrigued by how they operate and stuff. So, and they're just larger than life type of people. And so, having a glimpse kind of into their world was a lot of fun. But yeah, like the big tracking shot of them coming into the Copacabana down through the kitchen and all that. I mean, just pure classic shots and stuff. And Scorsese, to me, he's one of those directors who he's a little bit more difficult to sort of like pinpoint his exact style. There's a few things that he does that not a lot of other filmmakers will do. He'll straight up like pan away from the action toward just like a still shot of something. In Taxi Driver, there's a scene where Robert De Niro, Travis Bickle, he's on a payphone. He's talking on a payphone, and the camera just like pans off of Robert De Niro talking on the phone, just looking out this hallway. And his like conversation on the phone fades out, and just like the ambient noise of outside New York City gets louder and just like fades in, and just like weird stuff like that. I mean, just it's things that, again, other filmmakers don't really do, that sort of pushes the boundaries of the medium and how it can be, kind of shown and utilized and that kind of stuff. So yeah, just phenomenal. He's one of those guys where you watch one of his movies, and if it doesn't hit you right away, if you watch it again, it'll continue to just like grow on you, and you'll realize how good of a movie you're really watching in the heart of it. So Shutter Island is a great example of that. I actually didn't care for it the first time I saw it. Now I've seen it like 2 or 3 more times, and I know like the last time I watched it, I was like really engrossed in everything that was happening within the movie, and that's not even like one of his like best films, quote unquote best films. So yeah, he's a phenomenal director. He's obviously known for doing the gangster movies and stuff, but yeah, he's knocks it out of the park every time.
As many times that I had previously talked with guests about The Departed, it was being brought up all the time. I was like, God, I haven't seen it in so long. So St. Patrick's Day, wife and I watched it, and it holds up. Every bit of it. Just, yep. Gabe, have you got a favorite Scorsese? Oh, wait, we've talked about your Goodfellas, right? Or is it Casino? Are you muted again?
Sorry, yeah, I was muted again. I need... Damn it! Damn you, mute button.
See you nodding and talking.
But no, yeah, Casino. Yeah, but I mean, it's a lot. I've seen Goodfellas, and obviously we talked about it on Jack's podcast, and now all I can think of when I talk about Goodfellas is that GIF of what's his face with the big eyes. I can't think of his name right now.
Ray
but,
Liotta, yeah.
Yeah, Ray Liotta.
Yeah.
I either like popping out.
Now, anytime
his like laugh was hilarious. I mean, I was dying every time he would start laughing. He's just got a really like big laugh in that movie, and it's
so good.
It's pretty incredible.
But yeah, I mean, I agree with you, Dave. He really does knock it out of the park, and I still need to sit down and watch The Irishman just because I've heard a lot of good things and. We're crazy.
So I mean, it's kind of obviously it's like a slower moving picture, and it's very long. But we sat down and we watched it. We were both shocked. Like we want the whole movie. We didn't even pause it to have a bathroom break. I was like shocked. I was so I really liked it. But I think one of the things that I love about, especially my top three, so Kubrick, Scorsese, and then Spielberg. They're all directors who are very focused on making sure that the actors are in the role when they're filming, but they're also just very cognizant of like the technical side of things as well. So just being able to balance that as a director, I kind of commend them for that, for that ability.
And since you mentioned number 3, Spielberg, we'll talk about him. And again, him taking over for Stanley Kubrick for AI. You also have to think there's not a lot of directors who could be up to the challenge like that either, because his track record, when was that, 99 when AI? Was it so 98, 97 is probably when it was getting made or something around then. And I think I want to say it released in 99.
Well, so Kubrick passed away during filming of Eyes Wide Shut. I think they were almost done with it. Like AI was basically a project that was like, I mean, it was greenlit. It was like on its way to being a movie when he passed away. So, but I know that Kubrick and Spielberg, they had a conversation about it. Like to that level. And I think Kubrick had asked him if he would finish it, or actually make the movie for him. And so it was something that he kind of did just to help a friend or whatever. But
true.
If you watch it thinking I'm going to watch a Steven Spielberg movie, I think you'll be disappointed. But if you go into it and you try to put yourself into the mindset of I'm about to watch a Stanley Kubrick film, I think you'll get a little bit more out of it. Just because again, it was sort of written and designed for his style, and Spielberg. I did a great job like taking up the mantle and going forward, but. To me, I think Spielberg, his big thing is, to me, he is not shy about the fact that he knows that he makes movies for audiences. He makes movies for people. And some filmmakers, I think, are maybe a little bit more shy to acknowledge that because, maybe they think it has a negative effect on the artistic value of the movie. But I don't think that there's anything wrong with saying, no, I want to make a movie that people are going to go and sit in the movie theater and have a big bucket of popcorn and just enjoy. And I think he's able to do that, whether he's doing an action adventure like Indiana Jones or whether he's tackling an incredibly serious subject matter like Schindler's List or Saving Private Ryan. There's another reason why Steven Spielberg's name is up there with everybody else's. I mean, the guy just knows how to make a movie. There's no other way to get around that. My favorite kind of like story of his is he had done Jaws, and then he had done Close Encounters, and so he had a bunch of success off of both of those movies, and then he went and made
1941? Yeah,
1941, which I've never seen.
Same, I haven't.
But I having watched like documentaries where Spielberg's talking about it, there's a really great one that's just called Spielberg on Spielberg, where he's talking about his movies. And he brings up 1941 because he says, he said, I think I was just like riding on this high that like whatever I do is going to be successful. And so he just like threw everything into this movie. And he said, I think I just kind of like bombarded the audience, because I just was doing whatever I wanted to. And he paid the price for that. Like the movie tanked. It did not make any money. It was really bad. And so then when he was getting ready to do Raiders of the Lost Ark, that was the movie he did right after 1941. And he said, I wanted to make sure, I learned a pretty valuable lesson. So I wanted to make sure that I was as prepared as possible for making this movie. And so he was like way under budget, even with Harrison Ford's injury and all that kind of stuff. He ended up coming in like under budget, on schedule, all that kind of stuff. He had everything planned out, and it, became one of the most successful movies that he's ever made. So, I think that was kind of like the lesson he learned. But for me, the one movie that stands out more than any other is the first Jurassic Park, just because, again, like that age, 93 when it came out, mind-blowing special effects.
Mm-hmm.
I just watched a YouTube video that, was kind of breaking down like, why is the first Jurassic Park so much better than its sequels, and it kind of breaks down just, again, from a technical standpoint and also from a performance standpoint, like what Spielberg was able to do in that first movie to create this the movie's 25 years old basically, and you can pop it in and compare it to almost any movie that's made today. Yes, there's going to be some parts that are a little dated, but overall, you're still just going to love that movie. I think it's a perfect film.
I think that's why Jurassic World worked as well as it did too, is because kind of like when Star Wars did The Force Awakens, and it rode on the nostalgia factor and almost recreated the same storyline, same pattern, just new characters, and of course, we have new effects we can work with and new processes. That's kind of what Jurassic World did. But that was the big thing, is they kept the spirit of the original Jurassic Park, and then they widened the spectrum to, well, the park's done and it's a full place and it's operational already. And then, of course, you have the new CGI and everything. But they kept everything as spiritual to the original as they could. Jurassic World is probably one of the most successful reboots in a franchise that I've ever seen. And purely because of that.
I don't know if I agree with you 100%, but but no, to your point though, I mean, it's taking a lot of that spirit of that first movie and carrying it over into kind of like a larger scope and stuff. And it's obvious that the filmmakers who made Jurassic World really loved that content and that place that they got to go and explore and visit as a filmmaker. And it's hard, again, Steven Spielberg, just like John Williams, like what else can you say about the guy? He's been making movies since he was 8 years old, and he just knows how to do it, man.
Now, the second Jurassic World, the same opinion is totally not there. That movie was, the only reason I own it is because I'm one of those that has to have the collection. But it wasn't.
Well, my wife really likes
Jurassic
good. World and Fallen Kingdom. So, and she also loves Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. And before you go off on me,
I like that one. I like it.
So do I. I have a hard time actually like saying that I don't like movies because, I feel like that's kind of rip off. I was entertained for the amount of time I was in. But no, it was the very first Indiana Jones movie she ever saw. So at that point, she was like just hooked. So and she loves South American Central and South American culture and history and stuff too. So the idea of like the crystal skull and Mayan history and Aztec history, and that she's a big fan. So that kind of hit like all points for her.
What?
So I mean, Raiders is like an incredible movie. I do love that like somebody actually went and they said, if you just removed Indiana Jones from the plot of Raiders and the Lost Ark, everything would have occurred the way that it would have anyways, which is kind of like a funny thing to go in and think about, like, oh yeah, if you just took him out of the equation, everything would literally happen the exact same way. He almost has no actual effect on the plot itself. But no, we've obviously already talked about, Saving Private Ryan and all these other movies that he's done, and even things that he doesn't direct, like even if he's just a producer on something.
DreamWorks.
Exactly. Yeah. That's what I was gonna say next. Like, there's so many things he doesn't even direct, but I just feel like he's one of those people. He's like, and here you go. It's gonna be a hit now. There you go. You're welcome. But yeah, it's crazy. Like looking at his list is just producing wise, it's crazy, and then right into directing. But yeah.
David Fincher, he got his start with a not so good movie and then just took off. Because,
so
of course.
The funny part.
Yep.
I just told you that the first Indiana Jones movie my wife saw was Kingdom of the Crystal Skull.
Alien 3 was your first Alien movie?
Yeah. So it has like a special place in my heart. And I actually just recently watched, there's like a director's cut.
Yeah.
that you can. It's like vastly different than the theatrical version of the movie. But yeah, man, like he did some interesting stuff. The movie got cut up by the studio, but yeah, he's just gone on to just do like again incredible movies. Seven was one that I watched. Like I think I bought the DVD. Was the first time I saw it. So like 2001, 2002, something like that. And that was just another one of those movies that just like blew me away. I'd never seen a movie like that before.
What's in the box?
Oh man, yeah. Like, and and again, he's just continued to like crush it, over and over and over again. And fun anecdote: I had a buddy of mine. He lives in LA now with his wife and kids and stuff, and they all do acting and a handful of other things. But he got to be Ben Affleck's stand-in for Gone Girl.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, that movie, man.
But he was talking about, I don't know which scene it is specifically, but I guess there's a scene where Rosamund Pike is basically just supposed to kind of just be like acting naturally around the house, having a glass of wine, doing this, whatever. And Fincher basically just like made her do the take over and over and over and over again. He just like kept making her do it. And my buddy was like, explaining this process to me and kind of saying like, none of us really knew like what he was trying to like get out of her. He just kept making her do this like really simple take over and over again, like a really, really easy thing. And he said they'd probably gotten up to like take 40, somewhere around there. And Fincher normally works behind a monitor, and he just like got up. He, said cut, got up, walked over to Rosamund Pike, and then just like didn't like berate her, but basically was like, all you're doing is coming home and having a glass of effing wine and sitting down. Like that's all there is to it. Why don't you just relax and just do that? And then he went back. They did one more take. She did it, and he said, cut, perfect, we're good. So like he'd gotten her to a point where she was just going through the motions, and so he just went through and just said something that was just gonna like cut right through her, so that way when she did the scene the next time, she was still doing the same motions, but she had something else going on in the back of her mind, and that's all that he was trying to convey. But he had this like interesting way of doing it, and I've heard that about him. I know that some not every director does that. Clint Eastwood and Ridley Scott, they're both directors who they almost don't like to rehearse because they like to get that nervous energy of the actor. Unlike the Clint Eastwood will do 3 takes tops, maybe. He's another one of my favorites. If my list went longer, he'd be on there.
Yeah. Now, if it's the scene I remember too, I want to say she's supposed to be aggravated at some point too. So part of me wants to think that he did it so many times to kind of build that frustration within her, and then just tell her it's so simple, and then she just there's that sort of decompression that natural releases with that. And oh God, he's a genius. He really is. I loved when he did the Girl with the Dragon Tattoo remake.
Yeah.
That movie, and I've always been a fan of his visual style, and I'd seen the Swedish version, and then watching that one, I preferred it. And not because, the Swedish version is amazing, but I preferred it because, well, first of all, Trent Reznor's Nine Inch Nails is one of my all-time favorite rock bands, and of course, composers. But you have that combination in this story of revenge and betrayal and just oh my God. And of course the scene with Skarsgård and the fact that Daniel Craig and Fincher and him decide to take Orinoco Flow by Enya, and the whole joke of it was I think you and I discussed the story once. Where have you seen Girl with Dragon Tattoo, Gabe?
Mm-mm.
So there's this torture scene where Daniel Craig, David Fincher... Oh, no, it's fine. I'm not going to tell you too much. You're just going to know about the music that goes on. So David Fincher, Daniel Craig, and Skarsgård, they sit down, and they're like, what music should we put to this torture moment? And Daniel Craig's just flipping through his iPod, and Enya's Orinoco Flow comes on, and David Fincher, busts out laughing and says, yes, let's use that. And that scene was just so weird because you have this brutal torture happening, and Orinoco Flow is playing.
It's a very Singing in the Rain, Clockwork Orange.
It really is. It
Ooh.
really is. And I was laughing, but also like biting my fingernails at this scene because it was twisted. The whole and the fact that they are like this adds to it. Oh, that moment is probably why I love that movie as much as I do. No, he has done one. Of course, the Mindhunter series for Netflix is probably one of my favorite Netflix series out there, just because of how grisly and how psychological he gets with it. And that's another thing I love about him. Got to quicken up the pace here. Michael Curtis is your number 5, and of course he's been known for Casablanca.
Michael
Curtiz. I always say it wrong. I do. Mom said say it how it's spelled, and I did, and I was wrong. Thanks, Mom.
Well, hey, that's all right. He's from Austria and Germany, actually he's from Hungary. It looks like, yeah.
I'm hungry.
I'm also hungry.
That's why we gotta hurry up.
It's dinner time.
Yeah, right. But we've also got. He directed The Adventures of Robin Hood with the esteemed Errol Flynn.
So I chose him only because I've seen a lot of the older movies like Christmas, like Casablanca. But the reason why I chose him was because he is one of those directors that, again, inspired filmmakers later on. So Steven Spielberg has basically said, Raiders of the Lost Ark, they were watching the old Robin Hood movies and trying to figure out, how do they do that? The whole, the shadows, sword fighting, and then the real actors come into the shot and all that. He was like, blew me away. We had no clue how we even did it. It turns out it's stunt people off to the side and they're backlit. And so he used a lot of the same tricks and stuff that Michael Curtiz used and learned in these kind of bigger budget movies and took those on. So just in terms of tone, if Steven Spielberg says Michael Curtiz is the guy that inspired me, then I know that, he's got to be up there as well. Casablanca is garnered as one of the best films of all time, and it's another family favorite. And yeah, so had to throw him in. If I didn't choose him, I probably would throw Clint Eastwood in there just because I don't think I've seen a bad Clint Eastwood movie yet. I say yet because I haven't seen them all, but Unforgiven was another great one by him. Gran Torino was Clint Eastwood, and so love Clint Eastwood. But I had to throw it out. I wanted to throw in somebody that probably maybe wouldn't necessarily come up on everybody's list. So it's a little outside the box for a choice, but just knowing that he influenced a lot of the filmmakers that I love was enough for me to put it on there.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'm glad you didn't say Clint Eastwood, because then I would have said I hated the Jersey Boys movie because I love the musical so much.
I've seen neither of those. Haven't seen the movie, haven't seen the musical.
Well, it's about Frankie Valli.
Oh, I know. Yeah. I know that. I just haven't seen
That's
either.
all that mattered. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And I know he didn't direct it, but I just watched Fistful of Dollars yesterday, actually. So.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I got the set. Trilogy. I got the set after talking with Jack. Oh God, that was so. Just the intro, I had goosebumps, and I'm like, man, I've never been so excited for a Western in my life. This is gonna be wonderful. And yeah, just the stare and the look in the eye and everything.
Just wait till you get to The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly.
Oh, I've seen that one. It's been a long time, but I'm excited for a few dollars more in all of them.
All three of those are a lot of fun. But...
Awesome. Well, we're going to do something new because we're trying to quicken this up, and we're hitting an hour and a half, Gabe, because we talk too much. No, I'm just kidding. We're going to try to do the 5 films you haven't seen. We're going to give you 60 seconds per movie to why you want to see it.
Okay.
Which I don't think will be hard, but this will be fun. Gabe, do you want to run it and I'll time it? I'll time this one.
All right. Let's see if we can bang this out.
All right. Ready?
60 seconds on the clock.
Each movie gets 60 seconds. All right.
All right. Here we go. Right. Start off with number 1, something we're very familiar with, Singing in the Rain, and go.
So I'll have to just say I've never seen the movie start to finish. Obviously, I've seen lots of sequences from the movie. I'm very familiar with it. I know all kinds of trivia and stuff. So
45
for
seconds.
a movie that I know so much about, the fact that I've never seen it is just really kind of a shame. So I know that I absolutely it's a must watch, even though I've seen the majority of the movie already. I just need to actually sit down and watch it start to finish. So that's why it's number 1 on there. It's, I think, one of the only movie ride films I've not seen.
Cool. You go. What
38 seconds. 38 seconds. Wow.
All right. Are we going to try to break a record?
I can probably
All right.
do most of these very quickly, honestly. So
I mean, talking about a movie you haven't seen before, I'm sure it's going to be easy, but I just wanted to make it fun because we're trying
maybe this is a new segment. Like, hey, speed round. Let's
speed round. Yeah, kind of testing that out. So, all right, next
call
one.
It the finale round. Yeah.
Yeah, there we go.
right, exactly. All right, next movie, Dune. Didn't know about this movie. I looked it up. There's a 2020 version that hasn't come out yet, so I'm assuming you're talking about the 1984 version.
That is the version I'm talking about. I've never seen it. Just because, like, I'm a big sci-fi fan. I think a lot of us are. It's one of those movies that, like, a lot of people talk about. It seems to be very much like a cult classic, from what I understand. It is a little heady. David Lynch,
not
right?
The best movie. 30 seconds.
No, I've heard that. Yeah, not the best movie in the world, but I'm still just really intrigued. I think at this stage, I mostly just want to watch it because there is a 2020 version of the movie coming out. So I kind of want to just learn about it and see if it's something that I would get into.
Nice.
48 seconds. You didn't
48
in the rain.
Ooh.
So that's the 38's the one to beat. I will say quickly, if you haven't, or when you watch the movie, try to find Sci-Fi Channel did a version in 2000 with William Hurt of Dune. They remade Dune into a 3-part miniseries. And then a couple years later with James McAvoy, they did Children of Dune. Remember that this is the early 2000s, and it's a Sci-Fi Channel miniseries, so the CGI graphics are not the best, but it's actually pretty good. I like them better than the movie, and of course the movie has the cult following. That's why I watch it still.
It's all about the narrative. It's all about the narrative.
It really is. So 38 seconds is still the time to beat, and we're going to talk about your next one. Ready? Go.
Yeah, I think this one's ironic because we're trying to, talk about this movie quickly, and Jack spent an hour and a half on this movie. So we're going to talk about the Gone with the Wind. Go.
Gone with the Wind, yeah, classic, obviously. Hard to believe that not only came out the same year, but also was like co-directed by the same guy that did Wizard of Oz. Like that just like blows my mind that you're like Gone with the Wind and Wizard of Oz came out the same year, like 1930s, crazy. Harold is one of the best epics of all time.
30
it's
seconds.
Just I know it's incredibly long, so that's pretty much about it. Like I need to just commit to the time and actually say yes, I'm going to watch that movie.
5 seconds away from beating the record. All right, 43 seconds.
All right, you reset.
Yeah, reset. Are you ready for the next one? This is fun.
this is kind of fun.
I'm enjoying this. All right, ready, go.
All right, so this one has been in our finale, and I kind of actually want to watch it now that you bring it up. But Ben-Hur, go.
Yeah, and the original Ben-Hur. I'd be interested in maybe watching the remake that they did a few years back, which has it stars an actor, Jack Houston, who was in Boardwalk Empire, but he's like the nephew of Angelica Houston, and he plays Ben-Hur. Anyway, I want to watch the original, Charlton Heston, especially now, again, since I've been to Italy. I've seen the Circus Maximus, which is the actual, track that they ran, actually did these races, which is incredible. But I also got that a couple weeks ago, and he was like, "Oh, you need to watch Ben-Hur. It's this incredible epic." That's why I want to check it out. As far as like the sandals and sand and what do they call it? Swords and sandals movies. Ben-Hur is the number one on my list.
Nice.
53 seconds. Ooh, you got close there. All right, we got one more. I just saw this one for the first time the other day, actually. So, are we ready?
Yeah.
Yep.
Go.
All right, so this should be fun. I'm probably going to spend a minute trying to pronounce it correctly, but Rashomon? Did I say that right?
Got it. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, Rashomon. Actually, Chris, the reason why I threw it on there was I think it was after your conversation with Juan Carlos. You guys had been talking about, Magnificent Seven, Seven Samurai. So it's Akira Kurosawa. This one, I've seen The Seven Samurai. It's the only Kurosawa film I've seen. Based on what I know about Kurosawa's movies, Rashomon is definitely just like the next one I want to watch. So
yeah.
I would put like other, he's got others after that I would definitely check out, but that sounds like a definite number 2. And I think it's like the first movie where they did this, where it's like one event happens and then they replay it through the point of view of like several different people over the course of the movie.
Oh yeah.
So it was like one of the first films to do that. So yeah, that's why it's on there.
55 seconds. Yeah, well, that was the term. I forgot where I heard it. I think actually Juan Carlos might have brought up, but the Rashomon effect. No, it was TCM because it was on Turner Classic Movies. The term for the nonlinear storytelling is dubbed and nicknamed the Rashomon effect because Kurosawa used that style to tell it from the different point of views, and you're seeing the same situation in different angles.
Nice.
So yeah,
there's actually a really great Stanley Kubrick movie called The Killing. It's you can definitely see where movies like Ocean's 11 were inspired by and stuff, because it's a gang of criminals and they're going to try to essentially rob like a racetrack, a horse racing track. But they do that. They literally they kind of set up the heist, and then everything takes place around the number 7 race or whatever. So you know that you're going back to another person's viewpoint because they have the announcer coming on and going, and now the start of the number 7 race, So they did that with The Killing, and obviously they've done it with tons of movies ever since then. I think The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance is kind of like that. So tons of movies have been done that way since, but from what I understand, that was kind of like the first. So that's why I want to check it out.
Awesome, man. We're gonna do your last 3. I like this time thing. Let's keep it going. Your favorite decade of film is the 1990s. You've got 60 seconds on the clock and go.
Jurassic Park, The Rocketeer, The Matrix, whatever. How many movies do I even need to like rattle off that are from the 90s? So being born in 1983, I was 7 years old when 1990 rolled around. So, between 7 and 17, that's, a formidable age to be learning about movies, really getting involved in how they're made and the kinds that are coming out. And the 90s is probably like
30 seconds.
One decade of film that I think saw huge leaps, especially in the special effects department, and some really remarkable movies. Honestly, all I'll say is Jurassic Park to The Matrix and everything in between.
Yep.
You don't need to know anything more than that.
Pretty much. 47 seconds. This is fun. Yeah, we need to figure out a couple of spots to put this. Your favorite guilty pleasure in 60 seconds or less is Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. Go.
Yeah, so another one I got introduced to. I think my brother had me watch this movie because he was a couple years older than I am. So I think I'll watch it with him first. Another just completely insane. Like, I've never seen a movie like this before. So Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. It's an independent movie. It's directed by Terry Gilliam, who, for those of you who don't know, he also made Brazil, the Imaginarium of Dr. Parnassus. He worked very closely with all of Monty Python. So you're looking at some like really zany directing. Incredible performances by Johnny Depp and Benicio del Toro specifically, but it also has Christina Ricci and Tobey Maguire. I mean, it's a who's who in this film, 90s film. But yeah, it's about Hunter S. Thompson. It's based on one of his books, so if you're not familiar with him. And he's supposed to be covering a sporting event, but instead he and his buddy just get jacked on all kinds of drugs and boozing and all kinds of stuff, and they just tear up Las Vegas.
59 and .45. We're like right there. Nice.
We can't stop here.
Too, we can't.
This is that country.
Nice.
So yeah, I'm a little bit of a Hunter S. Thompson fan. Ever since I saw that movie, I've read several of his books. There's also Bill Murray did a Hunter S. Thompson movie in the 80s. It's called Where the Buffalo Roam. And it's actually got Peter Boyle plays the same character that Benicio plays. Bill Murray plays Hunter Thompson. And in that one, he's actually on the road for Richard Nixon's election campaign. So very different kind of story, but you can tell. So Bill Murray, Hunter Thompson, Johnny Depp, just like total weirdos. All three of them were like best friends after the fact. They always hung out together. Hunter Thompson, unfortunately, did commit suicide many years ago at his home, which is in Colorado. He talk about like a real life caricature. Like Joe Exotic has nothing on Hunter S. Thompson, in my opinion. So
Maybe that's
Yeah,
why I've given
like-
no 2 cents to the Tiger King at all, because no.
Yeah. So anyway, if you're looking for like just a crazy ass ride, watch Fear and Loathing. I could quote it all day.
It's a great film. We're going to go for your last point, 60 seconds, to tell us why you were very disappointed or highly disliked the movie Splice. 60 seconds on the clock, and go.
So Splice is a movie that nobody should watch. It came out in 2009. It's got Adrian Brody in it. The previews made it look really interesting. It's about some genetic engineers. They splice together DNA of different. Anyway, they create like a brand new like creature or animal, and it looked like interesting. I thought it would be more scientifically grounded, and it is not. It goes way off into like the deep end of sci-fi crap, like just pure crap. Honestly, it's hard to explain, but it was one of the first movies I went to with my wife. We were dating at the time, and she had a friend in town. Like she had a college buddy of hers in town, and he and I were like really excited to go and see this movie. So we made Aaron go and see it with us, and it was just awful. I mean, the writers made like the worst decisions possible. It is terrible, and it's one of the reasons Adrian Brody doesn't work in Hollywood anymore.
Right on, like literally. Look at this. It's literally
There you
blinking
go.
on 1 minute.
Nice.
So that's wonderful.
Yeah, I can honestly say, like, yeah, I've seen worse movies in my life. You know, I've seen some like really
Your
bad
60
low
seconds
budget
is over.
movies.
Stop. Your
Well,
60 seconds.
I'm just pointing out there's a lot of bad movies out there, but like I had reasonable expectations for this movie, and like I've never walked out of a film before, but I was very close to walking out of this one. So don't watch it.
Gabe, I think we need to take this 60 seconds thing. I feel like very game show-esque right now.
Right?
We need to do this.
We could tie it into the Nicolas Cage film, Gone in 60 Seconds. This is our homage to Nick Cage.
Oh, he deserves every
We're gonna steal the Shelby Cobra Declaration of Independence.
and your face.
So.
Oh man, well Dave, thanks for being on the show again and letting us experiment with a video. Uh-oh.
No. We have to go. We don't have time for this.
Kermit's about to come out. I got a frog in my throat. I feel it. Well, thank you, everyone. You can find us on Spotify, YouTube. It's been a pleasure to have you on, Dave. Gabe, thanks for joining me as always. And a shout out to our new partners. We got our Florida Project, who's provided photography for our website. Autumn Star Entertainment, which is a little production company that Dave here works with. They're providing us some upcoming podcasting equipment, so appreciate that. And then Movie Nights, which is a local Florida podcast and production company who have made a few short films that have hit the film festival circuit locally, and their newest movie is going to a Vegas film festival. So congrats to them. My friends Dalton and Brian are part of that podcast over there. So check out Movie Nights on SoundCloud if you have time, or if you get tired of us. Either way. So thanks, everyone. We'll see you soon.
The Great Movie Radio Show is recorded in Orlando, Florida. You can visit our website at www.thegmrshow.com. Art direction and logo design provided by Mr. Bayless. Voiceover and intro work provided by Dave Feske and Joe Erickson. You can find our podcast on multiple platforms, such as Anchor, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and many more. Music provided by the YouTube Audio Library. You can find us on Facebook and Instagram. Just search The Great Movie Radio Show or The GMR Show. This has been The Great Movie Radio Show. We hope you enjoy your day, and we'll see you at the movies. The stuff dreams are made of. Goodbye, everyone.
You have been listening to a GMR radio production.